Hello and welcome to RiffScript presents All Fingers and Thumbs. My name is Janish Soni. I am the host for this episode, and today's episode is quite special for us because for the first time we are recording this offline and we are not doing this over a Zoom call. And another thing about this episode is about two of the greatest men ever alive during the 20th century, and both of them were from India. And we are going to discuss their perception on modernity, and we have a very dynamic personality as a guest for this episode. His name is Shivang Jariwala. He is a student of political science and he is quite intrigued by various political theories and literature. So let's welcome him today and let's learn more about modernity and what was the perception of modernity from Indian context. Welcome Shivang to our episode. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Janice and RiffScript for having me here. It's a great pleasure for me as well to be here and have some good conversation with you.
Yeah, we have always had great conversations, I would say. And today the topic is quite intriguing for me because I've never read about modernity, and whatever I've read is because of you, because we were going to do this podcast and I wanted to understand modernity as a concept. So Shivang, could you make us understand the definition of modernity and what's your perception of the modern world?
See, modernity does not come as in a chronological manner or a periodical manner. It's not like that before it was a pre-modern era, or it's a historical sense, right? But modernity does not come in this manner. It comes with the dynamic change of the society. It comes with our behavior, and there are many incidents which we see nowadays that even particularly Indian modernity it's totally different than Western modernity, and different continent has a different modernity. Even there is one scholar in sociology. His name is Dipankar Gupta. He says that modernity has not yet arrived. So whatever we feel modern is not really modern, but it's a Westoxication. It's because we have a sense that whatever technology or science we are using it's a modern invention. Or of course it's a modern invention, but it does not bring the modernity. We have adopted this technology from the West, like a television or air condition, many things, many technology we have adopted or we brought from West. It is our Westoxication, our fascination towards West, which make us that we are living in a modern period. But our behavior towards it, how do we face it? How do we tackle it? Those technology, how our understanding is being shaped, that really brings the modernity. Not the technology or not the modern invention.
Okay, interesting. So let's say all those underdeveloped nations, or who are the nations which are developing, and they try to absorb and consume all those things which are considered to be modern from the perception of the West, and we try to adapt all those things. Will that make the whole world modern?
Well, no. I wouldn't say it will make us modern. I would give this incident name as an Westoxication. Well, I would say it is a gift of colonialism. Well, colonialism shaped the idea of our understanding, our idea of modernity, our idea of particularly our behavior.
Interesting. So how do we define modernity from the Indian context? I mean, how do we say that if you've quoted a great author, Dipankar, right? So Mr. Dipankar said that modernity has yet not arrived in India, right? So how do we understand that after this particular point of time, or after applying these many things, we'll be able to shifting towards the modern world? How do we recognize that?
Well, his understanding of modernity is like that. Modernity brings dignity of individual. It comes with the diversity. It comes with the how we treat our individual's opinion in society. how we tackle the dissent and his views. How do we tackle the different ideas which are not really popular?
So, Shiva, if we try to understand modernity, I mean, what changed exactly around the world that made us realize that we are shifting towards modernity or modernity has arrived?
Okay.
What exactly happened?
Well, before modernity, or in other sense, we can say before the movement of modernism, we had a dominance of religion all over the society. So religious leaders used to control the entire society through scriptures, through religious texts. So the truth, the source of the truth was the only one, the religious text. So it was the main concern we can see in the pre-modern era.
Interesting. So, I want to understand this. Even in modern era, science and religion coexist, right? Without being an interference in each field, right? But still, we see around us that people still believe that if we follow religion, then we are orthodox. We understand this. We understand people like this, that if someone is following religion and that person might or might not deny scientific approach, but we still consider that person to be an orthodox. And at the same time, we consider a person who has scientific approach towards life, who takes care of his life through the lens of science, then we consider that person to be modern.
Yes.
So, how does that work? I mean, does that make us less or more modern?
See, this is the exactly going on in our society. If you won't go to a high good restaurant, or if you won't consider the scientific matter, if you won't consider the popular notion of science or technology, you would be considered as an orthodox, or you would be considered as a conservative. That if you take Ayurvedic medicine, or if you take if you do fasting on any reason, you will be considered as an orthodox or conservative, right? And I have a problem with this kind of attitude which we have right now in contemporary time, and that's why I can see the science has become more prestigious than anything before that.
Interesting. It's like using Nokia 3300 in the era of iPhone, right? Where people would make fun of you that you are using a phone which is of an previous era, and then you will feel ashamed, right? That you are not keeping up with the trend, right? The modernity has made us like that.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't go with the trend, they will consider you as a traditional.
Interesting. So, I want to understand I want to get into the crux of this concept, right? How modernity has changed our lives, our routine, and how our routine has affected the concept of modernity. Because I believe that every single concept that is there on this planet, it works both ways, right? People affect that concept, and that concept affects people. So how does that work from the context of modernity?
Well, around us, we can see many products of modernity. I could give a name of some products. These are industrialization, scientific revolution, scientific technology, capitalism. These are the products of modernity. So if you see, and even yes, urbanization. Before the arrival of modernity, we used to live in villages. When we are still living in villages, but you can see the constant migration from village to urban area. So because there are many opportunities, there are schools, there are colleges, we can easily find the resources from in urban area, as facilities are there. So migration has increased a lot in this contemporary time.
Correct. And also what I've observed when you said villages, I've observed that even our villages are getting urbanized.
Exactly.
We are not, we are not interested in keeping villages like that. We want to improve everything about villages and we want to make them urban. So ultimately we are losing villages, we are losing the natural resources that are out there, and that has contributed into climate change, right?
Yeah.
So we have done a lot of damage to our planet by being modern.
Yeah.
I would say.
Exactly, and you are totally right. This migration, although there are many thinkers like B.R. Ambedkar who admire this or who appreciate this migration, that villagers, rulers, those who are living in a rural area have to go to the have to go to the urban area.
As you've rightly mentioned about villages and the urban areas, right? So what I've observed is we are not content with villages in their own in their condition, and we want to improve the life around villages. So what we are doing is we are urbanizing the villages and we are losing natural resources. So somehow we have, due to modernity and due to our constant need of urbanizing things, we have contributed a lot in climate change. So we have dug our grave. We are digging our grave, I would say, and we are doing a lot of damage to our planet.
Yeah. Even the modern cities, the urbanization, the movement of urbanization has damaged a lot to nature. If you see even contemporary problems, one of the big contemporary challenges or problems in front of us is the urbanization, because many people have started migrating from their villages to urban area or to cities. Do we have enough space to give them shelter? Do we have enough resources to give them? So this is the big crisis is going to come. The crisis of space, the crisis of the density going to be increased. That's the major problem in front of us and in front of the government.
Right. So as we are talking about urbanization, I have read this that Tagore was against urbanization. So, Shivang, I want to bring in Gandhi and Tagore in this conversation. I want to understand what their idea was and what their perception was about modernity, because they were very important people for our nation and for the idea of India. So it's important to understand modernity from Indian context as well. So could you enlighten us?
Sure. Particularly, both Gandhi and Tagore were very skeptical towards modern civilization and modernity. Let me explain what Gandhi understood modern civilization. He has written an amazing text called Hind Swaraj. In his text, he says that modern civilization will not take us to the civilization, but it will take us towards barbarism. Barbarism, because it will make us more dependent on machineries. It will make us more dependent on technologies. The real sense of Swaraj, the real meaning of Swaraj is to be more self-independent. It talks about more self-realization, that you look into yourself rather than looking outside to search for peace, to search for happiness. So the modern civilization talks about happiness. Happiness lies in materialistic thing, in money. But the particularly Indian civilization, which talks about spiritual experience, which talks about spiritual happiness. Even in the same thing, Tagore has a similar point of view. Even he was also more or lessly agree with Gandhi that real happiness lies in spiritualism. Real happiness lies in Indian civilization, because the way, the kind of life we used to live before pre-modern era or Upanishadic, what I call practice, it was much better than modern civilization. Because modern civilization is nearly 100 or 15 years old. 115 years old. But our Indian civilization is more older than that. It's around 5,000 or 4,000 years old. So you cannot compare to this civilization on a basis of freedom, on a basis of materialism, on a basis of the contemporary platform. This is what their argument of.
But I understood what you are saying, and I kind of agree with what they were trying to portray. But if we look at the larger picture, and when we look at the context of the world, where it is headed right now, even a single nation cannot practice this, what they were preaching.
Exactly.
Because the world is moving towards modernity, and world is
Exactly.
moving towards building new technologies and new tools. So if one nation, any country tries to practice this, that's what we call self-reliance. And we do have this movement right now, right, that we are trying to rely on our local artisans, local talent, but we still have to be connected with the world, right?
Exactly.
So how do we, even in 21st century, when the world is moving ahead, how do we make sure that we are neither completely absorbed in the West, and nor we are completely we are not staying behind the other countries? How do we make sure that? How do we find the balance? How do we find the middle ground?
I think the problem lies in the understanding, because we are constantly in a race because we want to compete them. I think this understanding will lead us towards, I would say, barbaric society. I would say it will not lead us to the peaceful society. It will not lead us to a peaceful way. But I think the Gandhi and Tagore is giving, they are giving a kind of alternatives by talking about how Indian civilizations used to be, and the problem lies in the understanding of how we look at the notion of success and failure. Because today what is happening is that we feel that the person who does not have money, we feel that the person who does not have asset are not successful.
Right.
But the inner peace lies, or inner happiness lies in spirituality. This is what Tagore and Gandhi used to believe.
So do you think that what they were preaching at that point of time, during the 20th century, is that still relevant?
Exactly. Yes, it is relevant. See, Gandhi did not, I would say, was not completely against the technology. Even his spinning wheel, somebody raised a question in his, the one who used to ask a question in Hind Swaraj, he asked this question, that even your own spinning wheel is made out of the technology. It is made out of the modern invention. Well, how would you look at this? I said, okay, the kind of machinery we need, but we do not need to surrender ourselves. A kind of, I would say, technology is needed to ease our work, but we do not need to surrender ourselves. But what we are seeing right now, we are totally surrendering ourselves to technology. You can see internet. Can you even imagine? Can you even imagine a day without having internet? No. Even look at the education system. Right now we are fastly moving towards the I would say digitalization and technology, where in future the person who will not have internet, who will not have any access to this kind of greater so-called great schools or education system, he will not be succeeded. So I have a problem with that notion. And a day I can imagine that people will fight each other. People will compare themselves in terms of their assets. Even it is going on right now.
Correct.
And this is very problematic, which I feel.
Right. Even today, you are right, because there is this whole movement going on. I believe that people are trying to preach hustle culture. People are trying to preach that you must do this, you must do that. We are trying to compartmentalize our days. Our how do we move towards our life? There are many people in the world who are writing books about this, who are making videos, who are making content about it, and people are trying to follow that routine. When we say that these are the, when we look at the definition of success and failure from the typical point of view, and then people compare themselves to people who are already successful in typical sense, like, right, and they try to replicate their routine. So we are not behaving like ourselves and not believing in ourselves. We are moving towards something that should not happen.
Exactly.
If Gandhi and Tagore were here during this time, they were they would have they would have tried to they would have tried to convince youth.
They would have been totally stunned,
Yes.
and whatever they have assumed, it's a totally different picture we are seeing right now. The question you have asked right now, the current society, I would give a name of, I would call it a toxic positivity.
Correct.
A toxic positivity is all everywhere, and those motivation speakers are trying to convince the society, are trying to convince the masses that today money is the master.
Yes.
So they will drive towards that direction, and but they are not really they are not really understanding the socio-political scenario of the society. The person who is successful, he might be privileged, and the person who is not successful are not having that kind of privilege that it should be.
Correct.
Look at the caste consciousness in our society. Those who are coming from an elite class will succeed first.
Correct.
But what about those personalities who historically or from the ages they have been treated like as a slaves? For example, the Dalit. For example, the minorities right now. The kind of threat, the kind of fear they are feeling, it's something which is absolutely sad. It's very sad, and it's a tragedy that
Of modern
the
life.
leaders, the political leaders are not thinking about it. They are not worrying about it, as if it's a political issue. They are looking at it as a political issue. But I don't think so. Even those motivational speakers, they say they pretend that they are spreading positivity, but they are not.
Correct.
They are harming the societies.
Yes.
They are making feel the poor that you are no worthy person.
Right.
How do they feel?
Right.
What about the downtrodden class of the society,
Right.
who did not have any success in education system before pre-modern era? What about those? For example, caste system. In many schools of India, even now, the Dalit have been treating as if they are alien, as if they are, I would say, they are untouchables. The untouchability is still it is still being practiced. And what about this? The violence all over. I would like to say, and at least we should take a grant to say that modern civilization is a core of violence. Somebody wrote an article on science question, what science have done so far. In 20th century, after killing around 20 crore people or 20 or 22 crore people in the name of major violence, in the name of must violence, in the name of organized violence, they gave argument that we are going to create economic development. So they are displacing those kind of community from there to somewhere else. In that movement and in that practice, we have lost several cultures. I would call it the death of culture. And once the death of culture has started, we are losing ourselves. A death of culture means a death of part of ourselves.
Basically, what modernity has done is it has some positive aspects. It has made humanity believe that we can thrive to be on our best, right? See, if you look at the history, in the last 70 or 80 odd years, humanity has thrived immensely, right? We have achieved a lot of things. We have learned to go in the space, right? We are exploring the space. We are exploring various planets. So it has given us a lot of things because of this modern aspects and our focus on science, right? On our reliance on science. But at the same time, what has happened is, as you mentioned earlier, that uh, before modernity, before modernism, uh, there was a dependency on religion, right? People
Yes.
were taking religion as a fact, as a matter of fact,
Mm.
and they were believing it relentlessly without questioning anything. The same has happened since last 70, 80 years. We have seen that, and we have observed as a society, as a community, that science has, you know, has helped us a lot. So what we do is we believe in science without asking any questions.
Exactly.
Anyone, even if we are having a conversation, informally, and when we have a topic in which you have a non-scientific approach and I have a scientific approach, I'm conditioned to think that you are not a logical person, right? Because you are not, your approach is not scientific.
Exactly.
So I'm quite intrigued by our fascination and by our reliance on science, and what makes us reliable. I mean, what makes science so reliable to us? What used to happen before modernity to religion, same is happening with the science. So what's the reason behind that?
See what happened with religion, even that space we never used to question. Or even during that time we were not allowed to question because the, the, the society was so intolerant in that sense. Because we had a fear that if you would say something, we would be any accident would have happened, right? But I would say the same fear continues over here. But I would say that fear of death or fear of getting labeled or fear of getting I would say acclaimed has increased a lot because I see the science is constantly trying to make human a master of this universe. If you look at the anthropocentric lens, you would see that now human beings are trying to master the universe. Human beings are trying to master the earth, master the environment, as if human beings are the center of this universe, which is absolutely wrong.
Wrong.
So now we have become God for the entire universe.
Correct.
So we are putting, this is what the question of political comes here. This is what anthropocentric lens try to ask question to those humanists who always consider human as a first, human as a first successor or first utilizer, or I would say the first one who has a legitimacy to control the world. This is absolutely wrong. If you look at this anthropocentric center. But the question you have asked me about the science, that's true. The science have mastered our society in a two way. I would call it one, the incident which happened in England. It was about the I would call it I'm forgetting the industrialization, and the second was colonialism. The industrialization which create a movement in a science that we have done so many research. We have created so many immense research on medicine, or in many areas of the society, right? But the science is trying to legitimize the violence. I see in that manner. Okay, that whatever in the name of science you can do anything. By taking the name of science, you can do any violence, and it will be legitimized. Nobody will ask you even a single question that why you have done. For example, I will. The one incident happened in during the World War II. The United States has decided to bomb over the Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So they went to the best scientists in MIT. Say what we should do to bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So who helped them? Scientists were there.
Correct.
Did they have any moral responsibility? No. You can see the impact, you can see the consequences of that bombing on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Still we can see.
Correct.
Look at the situation is going on in Iran. Although Japan has created immense progress after that bombing. So who were they? Weren't they human? Did they have any moral responsibility towards society, towards the people of the society? So that's why the Gandhi and Tagore were talking about that how modern nation state has become a dangerous for the society, particularly for Indian society, and even for many society in Africa. What about those? So colonialism through colonialism, science to control the society, and the major effect, the major impact we can see even in the culture. I would call a cultural hegemony all over. The cultural hegemony of Western civilization. But in the name of development, we have displaced so many communities, even in India, and now we call them as a Maoist. Who they themselves don't know who was the Mao.
Correct. But we are still labeling them
Yeah.
as.
But it was a tribal movement to survive their land, to protect themselves. Who was snatching their land? It was the state who was doing so. So the modern nation state has many characteristics which were adopted from the colonial rule. So it is the modern nation state is nothing different. So we continue colonialism in a legitimate manner.
Yes.
So we legitimize the colonialism through modern nation state. So, and that's why Gandhi was really against of modern nation state, because it is very violent in nature. Because Gandhi once said that individual has a soul, but a state is a soulless machine.
Interesting. So, I'm quite intrigued, and this has been one of those insightful conversations I've ever had, because I've never looked at modern nation state from this lens, right? So, but I want to understand, because we are talking about Gandhi and Tagore, and they have met on several occasions, and they were quite, both were thinkers and both were, ahead of their time. But were there any incidences, or was there any kind of thing particularly about modernity that has made both of them different? I mean, were they had any kind of debate about this where both of their opinions were different from each other?
Sure, not only modernity, they have met several times in their life and they have discussed a lot and disagreed a lot on several occasions. They not only just talk about they did not only just talk about modernity, even in several topics. For example, even in Taj Mahal, when Gandhi was asked what does he feel about Taj Mahal, what did he feel about Taj Mahal, the Gandhi said it's a public display of private emotion, and it's a total waste of money, and it's totally useless. But when it comes to Tagore explained it in a very poetic manner, although he was a great poet, and he explained it very well. He said, there is one poem in Gitanjali on Taj Mahal. He said, it is a teardrop on a cheek of eternity. Well, what is a teardrop? What is eternity? It's bound to be uncertain, and it would not make much sense. And so in the Gandhi and Tagore both had a respect for each other. For both Gandhi and Tagore, the religion was very important. Both gave humanist orientation to religion and put human beings at the center of the religion. So the religion are being used for the human beings. Human beings are not for the religions. So he gave humanist orientation to the religion. Tagore was more sympathetic towards a Upanishadic tradition, while Gandhi was more connected with Gita.
Wow. So I mean, does that make them different in? I mean, can we point out that these were the things where Gandhi was right or Tagore was wrong or something like that, or were they both correct in their own ways?
Yeah, both were skeptical towards modern civilization, but the method which they used to counter modernity was different. For Gandhi used the non-cooperation movement. Gandhi brought Dandi March to challenge the colonialism. Gandhi's particularly method was to boycott the British clothes. And this step of Gandhi was highly criticized by Tagore. Tagore wanted to more open society, where we can accept the British clothes, we can wear the British customs, but we should not surrender ourselves to the British civilization. That's what's quite different between Gandhi's idea of modernity and the way they countered it, and Tagore countered modernity in a different manner by giving the solution in the Upanishadic training, Upanishad tradition.
Okay. So I mean, both of them were quite pivotal when it came to idea of India, right? But so how do we recognize that these are the things where we can, without trying? I mean, do we need to try both of their methods, or how do we approach modern civilization from our perspective?
See, nowadays in the contemporary times, it's totally become inevitable to accept modern nation state. Now,
So if let's say we want to use their approach, I mean either Gandhi's approach or Tagore's, or we want to find a middle ground between both their views, and we want to approach the modern nation or the modernity as a concept, we want to approach it rightly. How do we do that?
well, it is very difficult to use both method on the same time, and it is very difficult to challenge the modern nation state. It is very difficult to challenge the nationalism. Even right now, we can see there is a wave of nationalism, not only in India, even in the West, where people's sentiments are easily got hurt. So that's the problem we are seeing right now. But I would say Gandhi is trying to give alternative in his Hind Swaraj. He explained really well how India got colonized, and he said it was not Britishers who taken our country from us. It was us who surrendered ourselves to them, because we were tempted by the slight of civilizations. We made to understand that our civilization, our culture is relatively less important than theirs. So what we have done, we have accepted their culture, we have adopted their culture entirely. If you see our way of attire, our way of wearing clothes, our culture is somehow very westernized, and that's the problem. And in Hind Swaraj, Gandhi said that why India got colonized and which manner. The Gandhi says that we and particularly they disagreed on a occasion of non-cooperation movement. In non-cooperation movement, Gandhi burned foreign clothes, and Tagore said that why are you burning these foreign clothes? Why don't you give it to the poor? Gandhi said, how can you say like this? How can you talk like this? The poor man who are not able to take care of himself, how would he take care of the foreign refinements? So this kind of understanding, even in the Bihar earthquake, under which the debate was taken place, the Bihar earthquake, Gandhi said, we Hindu are practicing untouchability. That's why we are struggling with this Bihar earthquake. We are having this disasters in this life. So then Tagore replied this comment as if he was like that it's totally absurd way of looking this matter.
Correct. I would agree with Tagore on this.
Exactly.
Okay, right. So, okay, question.
Education. What modernity
Has done to our education. Okay. પછી એને આગળ એડ કરી પછી
એટલે હું કરી ગયા પછી
ના એટલે એજ્યુકેશન ને આગળ લઈ લેવો છે ક્વેશ્ચન આખો પછી છેલ્લે ગાંધી ટાગોર ડિબેટ. Okay. So I also wanted to know what modernity has done to our education system, because we are conditioned to look at things from a different perspective after modernism has taken place, and we are studying about capitalism, we are studying about colonialism and different aspects after what has happened in the 18th or 19th century, right? So can you tell us what has the impact of modernity on education?
Particularly on education, the impact is clearly seen. Whatever we have right now in India is a modern education system which is given by Europe, which is given by British. Earlier, it was a notion that if you want to create anything beautiful, it had to be moral and had to be truth. So, but after this notion, the modernity arrives, and in modern education, European modern education system, the trifurcation happened.
Okay.
And this trifurcation means the education system education is divided into three parts. The one is philosophy, another is art and humanities, and the third one is science. So art and humanities dealt with morality, and science dealt with truth. So that's why, and even right now we we can see science is a moral entity, a moral discipline. Scientists have no moral responsibility.
Correct.
We can see right now scientists are making research on animals by killing them. I'm quite aware about that fact. In future they are going to make a research on human beings as well, as they are doing with their mouse, and that they are doing with the rats, rabbits, and the many different and small kind of animals.
Right.
So what they are giving an argument that we are killing them in order to make new medicines. See,
In order to save the human.
so now in this manner they have legitimized the violence. They have legitimized the killing. So I have a problem with this notion.
Correct.
The science is trying to legitimize the violence.
Right.
Although science is necessary,
Yes.
but in what extent it should be stopped, we have to decide. Because our goal should not going to be more and more gigantic world. We need more and more empathic world, where we can stay quietly, we can move freely, move happily.
Right. What an insightful conversation we had. So, right. So, thank you, Shivang, for joining us today. It was quite a fascinating conversation, and after a long time. And this was our first episode where we had, recorded this in a setup that we are not used to. So it has been a tedious journey for us, but it has been quite interesting and fascinating for me and for Shivang, I guess. Right. To all those who are watching or listening to this episode, do like, share and subscribe to our channel, and also you can follow us on various platforms. We are available in audio. Our podcast episodes are available in audio form on various platforms, from Amazon to Spotify to Ghana, and we are everywhere. So you can reach out to us. Yeah, so it was quite a good conversation, and we hope that we can have many more conversations like this.
For sure. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. It was really great experience even for me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Same here. Yeah. Bye-bye. So bye-bye, good night, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching or listening to this episode. Stay safe, stay home.